Update 3.6 has been out for a couple of days now, and ever since its release, we've had a couple of banners to pick and choose from. We've had Nahida and we've had Nilou. Now I can't speak to Nilou, but I am here speaking for Nahida. Now, Nahida is one of those characters that when she was released was absolutely necessary, I would argue, for anyone that wanted a Dendro team, because we didn't really have very good Dendro options. At the time, we had Dendro Traveler, which was probably our best option, and Dendro Cole, who you can make work but isn't the most convenient Dendro unit in the known universe. And then Nahida came out and completely changed the game. But in update 3.6, is she still relevant? Now, too long didn't watch. Yes, the answer is yes. Nahida is still very relevant. But if you want a bit more of an explanation on why she's still relevant, allow me to try my best to sort of demonstrate why that is. Let's have a quick look at what her build currently is and what she looks like on my end. So she's got all of that. Her elemental mastery is 698. It could be higher, but you know, needs must. For weapons, she's got the sacrificial fragments. Pretty much any weapon that increases elemental mastery is what you're looking for. Currently, the only weapon that does elemental mastery that I own is sacrificial fragments, so that's the one I'm going with for her. In terms of artifact, she's currently on the Dendro set. You could possibly make the argument that an elemental mastery set could also work, but I think you get a bit more out of the Dendro set. So her artifacts aren't particularly great. They're all kind of geared towards elemental mastery as much as possible. Crit rate, crit damage, not fussed by at all. Just going straight for elemental mastery. She is C0. You don't need her at any of her constellations. To be honest, I know no 5 stars constellations. Now, her talents will depend on you. A normal attack, I've not leveled because I don't use her as a driver. I don't use her as a DPS outside of her E and her Q. But her basic attacks do some solid damage when combined with other elements and stuff. And it is a fair, it is a fair option if you want to do consistent Dendro damage. But that's not something I use her for. All schemes to know is kind of complicated in terms of the text. In essence, it is absolutely insane when you use it. It's so incredibly useful. So essentially, you can hold and mark up to 8 different targets, and they all get this thing called a Seed of Skandha. You can also just tap E, but it's not as nearly as useful. And essentially, all of the characters will be linked to one another. So if you do some kind of elemental reaction on one person, it'll affect everyone in the chain, essentially. There's a lot of text, and someone that is much smarter than me will probably be able to explain it better. But essentially, you hold E, you mark everyone around you, and then you just do a bunch of elemental reactions. And it kind of happens to everyone, and everything just explodes and dies, and it's fantastic. And it's all that really matters. Illusory Heart basically just makes everything better. The only problem with this ult is that it takes so long to put down. And because it doesn't, because it takes so long to put down, it has a long animation, it feels like. Not to mention, it doesn't actually deal damage because it just puts down a giant field, kind of like Bennett. I don't find myself doing it all the time, just because it takes so long. But it is incredibly useful. So when it is up, different element types provide different effects. With Pyro, when she's in the Shrine of Maya, you have to be in the Shrine, otherwise it does not work. The damage dealt by the Tri-Karma purification from all schemes to know is increased. So basically, just a flat DPS buff. With Electro, when this happens, the interval between each Tri-Karma purification from all schemes to know is decreased. So essentially, it'll proc more often. And then with Hydro, the Shrine of Maya's duration is increased. If there are at least 2 party members of the said element present when the field is deployed, the aforementioned effects will be increased further. Even if Nahida is not in the field, these bonuses will take effect so long as party members are within the Shrine of Maya. So essentially, her ult basically just makes everything better. So with Electro, you can do it more frequently. With Hydro, you can have her ult up for longer, and then Pyro is just a straight DPS buff. It's a very good ult. It's super useful. I hate how slow it is, but I can't deny that it really does make things better. Her passive, when her ult is up, the Shrine of Maya will gain the following effects. The elemental mastery of the active character within the field will be increased by 25% of the elemental mastery of the party member with the highest elemental mastery. You can gain a maximum of 250 elemental mastery in this manner. So essentially, you can take someone that already has a ton of elemental mastery and then give them a ton more. Or you can take a character like my personal favorite, Tartaglia, who is not built for elemental mastery, and then he has a ton of elemental mastery, so when he's triggering blooms and hyper blooms, there is more elemental mastery to pick and choose from. So essentially, it just makes everything better. The next passive, each point of Nahida's elemental mastery beyond 200 will grant 0.1% bonus damage and 0.03% crit rate to Tri-Karma Purification for all schemes to know. You can get a maximum of 80% bonus damage and 24% crit rate. Essentially, more DPS, more crit rate, which essentially equals more DPS because more crits. And last but not least, Nahida can use all schemes to know to interact with some harvestable skills within a fixed AoE. This is just a convenient, overworld type thing. It's not useful in combat. But looking at every single aspect of her kit, she's just so incredibly strong. It is unbelievable. I mean, it makes sense. She is an Archon. She is meant to be, a good character. But her normal attack is great if you want to use it for reactions. I don't bother with it myself because it's just not something I've tried out, but it is very effective and I see people use it all the time. All schemes to know is so incredibly strong, it is unbelievable. Being able to link multiple characters up to 8 opponents and then just absolutely swamp them with reactions is insane. The damage you can do is absurd. And then Illusory Heart just does more of everything, essentially. And then this gives whoever is out on the field more elemental mastery, and then this increases damage and crit rate. So in a sense, Nahida's entire kit is absolutely absurd. It is so good. She has and probably will be one of, if not the strongest Dendro character in the game for the longest time. I would not be surprised. This is why Nahida is still so incredibly relevant, even in update 3.6. The only inconvenient part about Nahida is that you have to have everyone linked with all schemes to know for it to get the max efficiency. Now, the problem with that is something in like Abyss, where you've got 6 opponents, you kill them, and then a new set respawn. You're going to have to re-put on all schemes to know. It can be a bit awkward reapplying all of the Dendro from all schemes to know, but the potential it provides is insane. The only downside is when a new wave comes in that you have to sort of redo your whole rotation again. But for most teams, that's not a massive deal. Now, one thing that is also great about Nahida is that even though she excels with multi-target characters, because, the more that are linked, the stronger it is, if you are just trying to perform a bunch of Hyper Bloom reactions or Burgeon reactions on a single target, she is also just as strong, because all schemes to know last for quite some time. As you can see, the Seed of Skarna has a duration of 25 seconds, and her cooldown for a tap is 5 seconds and a hold is 6 seconds. You almost never do your whole rotation in 6 seconds. Maybe there are some teams out there that do their entire rotation in less than 6 seconds. Mine does not, because Tartaglia needs to be on the field for more than 5. So with single targets, which is great for weekly bosses, because this is my go-to team for pretty much everything. You Nahida, you press E, and then that is just there for the longest time. So now, when I do Hydro, probably the worst boss to have picked this one for, actually, you get blooms. So while Nahida is exceptionally useful in groups, her single target pressure is also absolutely insane, because you never have to worry about reapplying your E unless they have a ton of health, like Raiden Shogun or something like that. Your E is just going to be stuck on them forever. And then you can also Q And it'll be on there even longer depending on if you have the correct elements, which if you're trying to do a Bloom team, you're going to need a Hydro unit anyway to do exactly that. But then, of course, we've got multiple targets where we just hold E, scan everything, and then everyone gets to enjoy being hit by the reactions. See? Didn't have to do almost anything. Now, you take that into something like Abyss. Unfortunately, you are going to have to constantly rotate between all of your characters every single time that you kill a wave. But you know, with how strong Hyper Bloom is, with how sort of slow some rotation teams can be, and how quick this has a cooldown for, like the hold has a 6-second cooldown. If you've got the book that I've got on, Sacrificial Fragments, you can sometimes, you know, completely get rid of the cooldown in the first place. Not that, you know, you really need the 6-second cooldown being deleted, because by the time you've done your whole rotation, it's going to be back up. Let's just give this a small try, shall we? Let's just pretend there's some enemies. So we Nahida E, I like to Kazuha group, Kuki Shinobu. You know, Tartag does his own thing. Once everyone's dead, we come back to Nahida. It's already back. The cooldowns are insanely short, it's absurd. If you're trying to apply constant Dendro applications, it can be a little bit funky with Nahida, because obviously her best option is this. I mean, you can obviously use her basic attacks. You know, for most teams, you don't really want to be basic attacking anyway, because you've got a rotation to go through. But in most instances, by the time you come back to her, when her E is back up, there's not really much you need to worry about, because you can rotate out and rotate back in, and her E's reset, and then you just do the whole thing again. Nahida, quite frankly, is just one of the strongest, if not the strongest, Dendro character we have. Now, don't get me wrong, Alhaitham, he allows for a ton of bloom cores, and is just overall very, very strong. But he does not have the power that is All Schemes to Know. All Schemes to Know with the linking is absolutely absurd. So for anyone that is out there thinking, Nahida's been out for a few months now, surely how good can she be? Even in update 3.6, Nahida is absolutely insane. If you do not have a good Dendro applicator yet, Nahida is one of, if not the best, for the very job. There is just not a part of her kit that isn't exceptionally useful. She allows for so many different teams, builds, and different play styles. Like, even if you don't really care for the whole link everyone, rotate business, you can have her as a driver. She's the only Catalyst user that has permanent infuse attacks because she's a Catalyst user. That's the one benefit to Catalyst users, is that you never have to worry about them not doing their element. If you want to have her as a main DPS, you can. Or you can have her as a standard, you know, rotational character. She's just so useful in pretty much every element of the game. Except, you know, when fighting something else that has Dendro resistance. But, you know, probably shouldn't be using her for that anyway. I just wanted to let people know that we're worried that, hey, is Nahida even still useful at this point? Yes. Yes, she is. She's incredibly useful. Now, the only problem that comes to mind with Nahida is that next patch, is it Baizu? I think it's Baizu. So we've got another Dendro unit coming into the game, and he is also a Catalyst user. He's a melee Catalyst user, which is a bit different. And he's more of a healer, whereas Nahida is more of a DPS. So if you have to make the choice between Nahida and Baizu, go for whichever character seems more interesting to you. I always say that you should play for fun over meta any day of the week, because eventually the meta is going to be just boring as dirt. So be sure to take that into consideration before you pull for Nahida. But if you've been thinking about picking her up for a while now, and you weren't sure if she was still, you know, as strong as she originally was, she is. She's absolutely insane. She's still an incredibly useful unit. And to be honest, probably will be for quite some time, because I honestly do not see her falling off anytime soon. So, hopefully that answers the question on whether Nahida is still relevant or not in update update 3.6. Thank you for those that stuck around until the end. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that good stuff. And until next time, I have been James, the Mayor of Jamestown. Goodbye.